Hi, this is Shirley, the herb lady. We're going to share, I got my husband here of 52 years, and we're going to share on how God got us into herbs to use them for his glory and for our lives. Both of us, we probably wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for taking these herbs. So my husband's got stories how God protected him, and then later on how he used herbs to save his life.
Thank you. Well, when I was a young feller, my neighbor, his name was Bill, and we would go out and we'd catch these little water snakes, and we'd bring them back up to his place, and he had a little old round tub there full of water, and we put them in there, and we thought that was something, catching those little snakes. And one day I was down there with Bill, and we was trying to get some more snakes, little water snakes, and I seen this one snake, but I didn't see my brother. He was coming down the little dirt road there, and I grabbed this one snake by the tail and yanked it up out of the water, and my brother got down there at that time, and he seen what I did, what I had in my hand, and he had a stick in his hand, a branch, and hit my hand with that, and I dropped the snake, and he pinned the snake down with that branch and put it right behind its head, and it opened its mouth, and I was surprised what I seen. Two big fangs, and his mouth looked white in the inside. I understand they're called cotton mouth. He saved my life right there, probably. Anyway, the Lord was protecting me even as a youngster. And I began to see this as time went on his protection. God's watching over how he protects a person and takes care. And many times we don't even realize it at the time. I went on from there. I was under 10 years old at that time. When I was 15, during that time, at 15, I got saved, accepted Jesus as my Savior, and I was with a couple of other guys. We was in a car going down the road. This was on an old river road. It was a dirt road. It wasn't nothing that was paved or anything, and the road wasn't very wide, and we were going alongside the river there, and all of a sudden here come a logging truck in the opposite direction coming at us. And back then you had to get out of the way. You had to, because they were a bigger vehicle. And so the driver of the car, he put it in reverse, started backing up, and was trying to get to a wider spot. And anyway, we ended up going over the river bank and rolling down to the river and hitting some boulders and all. And there was three of us in the front seat, and I was the one closest to the passenger door there on the right. And we got up out of the river, and it was around in September, if I remember right. Now, so the water was down low. It wasn't real high. And we got up out of there. Of course, other cars had stopped and seeing what was happening going on. And I got up out of the river, got up there, and they said, well, how is everybody, that was on the car? And I says, well, I don't know, I guess fine. And they looked at my right hand, and somebody says, look at your hand, it's black. And it really turned dark. And they pulled up my sleeve, and in my right arm, all three bones were broke, and it was not coming all the way out the skin, but pushing up at the skin. So they had a guy that was headed into town that was driving there, and he said he'd give me a ride. So I got in the car with him. He was going to take me on in town to the hospital. And so when I going down the road, all of a sudden, I heard a voice speak to me. And I looked to the driver to see if he heard that. It was so plain, so loud. And what I realized that it was God's voice. And he asked me a question. Well, I thought at that age, well, God knows all the answers. And I thought, why is he asking me? But anyway, he asked me a question. He says, well, who made you? And I says, well, Lord, you did. He says, then I can heal you. So I told the driver, when we get into town, I says, don't take me to the hospital. I says, take me to my pastor's place. Showed him how to get there. Got out of the car. He says, are you correct? Are you sure? Are you this what you want to do? And I says, yes. And I thanked him, shut the door, went and knocked on my pastor's front door. And he was just starting to come out the door. And he says, I'm going to minister at a funeral. I says, this just take a minute or two. And so come in, I told him what had happened. They could see my arm, all 3 bones were broke. And so set me down, him and his wife anointed me with oil according to the book of James in the Bible, and prayed for me. And I heard the voice of God again, and the Lord said, stretch forth your arm. And I stretched forth my arm, and it was instantly healed, all 3 bones. Now for the man's insurance, that the car that was in the wreck, that went in the river, I had to go in there and let the doctor check my arm and everything just because of his insurance. And the doctor says, well, there's nothing wrong with your arm. He says, maybe it was out of place. No, it wasn't out of place. It had been broke, but God miraculously healed my arm. He watched over me. Different things that I had went through, and he watched over me. As I got a little bit older, I went to the Army, went to Vietnam, and I become a door gunner in Vietnam. And there in our company area, talk about God protecting and watching over, we were overrun with cobra snakes. We also, there was the, what the GI called the two-stepper. It was called a bamboo viper. Anyway, the reason they called it a two-stepper, if you were walking at the time you got bit by that snake, then you had a chance to take 2 steps before you were dead. That's why they called it that. But God watched over and protected me. We got overrun by the enemy there in base camp one time, and I found myself in such a situation. And of course, I didn't have my machine guns from the helicopter. All I had was my Smith & Wesson 38 Special. And all of a sudden, here come the enemy running at me. And it seemed like to me they was running anyway. And I had no other way, and I just ran right down through the middle of them. And God protected me. I don't know if they didn't see me or what, but they didn't shoot me. I just ran through the middle of them. And all of a sudden, then here I was beside one of my door gunners. I seen him standing there, and he was froze with fear. And so I couldn't stand there and just talk to him. I hauled off and hit him and knocked him down. After everything was over, then we talked, and he said he could see what was happening. He could hear what was happening, but he said he couldn't move. He was so froze with fear, he said, until I hit him. And I went on from there, and I found myself in a situation. I was putting my machine guns up on the helicopter, and all of a sudden, this Vietnamese stepped out from the tail of the helicopter, pulled out a grenade, started pulling the pin on the grenade. Again, God stepped in and kept me alive. So it's been down through time that he's kept me alive. One thing that I didn't know about and didn't realize was the parasites in Vietnam. And I had gotten parasites, which was very easy to get. Anyway, of all the different times that God had protected me, I found myself with my lungs, and they was really getting bad. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, there's nothing that we can do for you. Just go home. In other words, go home and die. And that's when I came home to my wife, and she was selling herbs, and she began to study a whole lot more pertaining to the herbs, and she found there were certain herbs that she could give me. And what they did was, over a period of time, not overnight, but over a period of time, it killed all the parasites in my lungs. And from then on, I've been able to breathe real well. I didn't have the problem that the doctor said that I had. God used those herbs. It says in the book of Psalms that he gave herbs for the service of man. We just got to be smart enough to take the herbs. But it has really healed my body so much And here I am, this past January, I turned 77, so I completed 77. I'm in my 78th year, won't complete it till next January, but I take no medicine. I'm in good health. Those herbs that God made are very, very good. They're very healthy and they help you. And I'm very thankful how He has watched over me, taken care of me, and kept me alive this long.